Good afternoon to everybody sitting here. Good afternoon to everybody around the world. It's nice to be back. It's nice to speak again. Hello, Habi. Hi, Henning. Hi, Jarud. Hi, Auntie B. Okay, so today I'm going to speak about a very personal topic, a journey that I've been on since probably birth. When I was about 14, I remember listening to a very famous preacher by the name of Joyce Meyer. And I listened to her testimony, and a lot of the time when she preaches, she gives her testimony. It's pretty much, in the beginning, it used to be a lot of her preaching was based on her testimony. And one of the things she spoke about a lot was forgiveness. Forgiveness to her abusers, forgiveness for her perpetrators, how she had to deal with forgiving those who hurt her. And, you know, I think a lot of the time when she was dealing with that kind of hurt, it was very hard for her to forgive. It was very hard for her to get over the fact that her own father abused her, that her father was the abuser, and it wasn't somebody from the outside, but that it was somebody that was meant to protect her and keep her safe, and somebody that was meant to keep her safe from people outside. So I watched a lot of her sermons growing up. I had given my life to God when I was 14. But I think it was in the beginning of this year, or maybe towards the end of last year, Pastor Andrew was hosting a meeting in the Daniel's restaurant, and I wasn't part of the meeting, but I wanted to hear what was said, and I kind of eavesdropped. But one thing that stood out to me was Pastor Andrew had said most children under the age of 14 are more likely to remain walking with Christ than those who become saved when they're much older. And that was me. You know, I became saved at the age of 14. Even though I believed, even though I spoke in tongues, even though I was young, so Christianity wasn't a huge thing for me. It was, my parents got saved, so I got saved, and we went to church. But this is not what my testimony is based on. When I was about 2, my parents got divorced, and from that moment, my mom didn't only divorce herself from my father, but my mom divorced herself from the lifestyle, from everything that came from who my father was, everything that my father represented. My mother divorced herself from that, which meant she divorced herself from me too. So you can put it on, yeah. So from a very young age, just one down. So from a very young age, my mother didn't want me. So I was given away a lot. I cannot tell you how many people I was given away to, but if my mom could find somebody to give me to, she would. And I didn't realize it. I mean, obviously I was small. You don't know who you're given to. You don't know why you're given away. But my life was pretty much a yo-yo, back and forth, then with my mom, then not with my mom. Then, when I got to, I was diagnosed as being sick from the moment I was born. So I think that was a massive burden upon my mom as well. But my mom then gave me to my dad when I was about 4. And I stayed with my dad, but my dad was remarried. My mom had not been remarried. My dad was remarried to a woman who saw me as a threat. So from the word go of meeting me, she already despised me. She already had it in for me. I stayed with my dad until I was 6, and one day my mom came to fetch me to visit her. But what I didn't know was my stepmom had told my mom, if you want her to visit you, you never bring her back. And my father, my biological father, was my world. He was a superhero. He was everything a father could be. And my mom took me away there. But my mom had remarried too at that point in time, so I was then introduced to my stepfather, who my mom then gave me the opportunity, do I call him by his name or do I call him by Dad? So being humble, I said, I'll call you Dad. Anyway, so it wasn't about 2 weeks after I'd met this man that he started beating me. I was six years old for the first time that I was physically beaten by him. And I tell you, it never stopped. It never stopped up until the times I left, or the times I ran away, or the times I moved, but I know it's my perception, but I almost feel like I was their stress reliever. I almost felt like I'm one of 4 siblings, an elder brother, a younger brother, and my sister. Sorry, Mr. Nassen's messing around with my mic. Mr. Nassen. Okay, so, where was I? So, I'm of one of 4 siblings. But out of my entire family, out of my entire sibling family, every single one of them were admired, were loved, were taken places, were given everything their hearts desire. I was the only child who was rejected. I don't know why. Okay, I did eventually find out why. But I suffered rejection from the beginning. It was, I was that kind of child who just needed love. But I'm going to go back again. When I was 3, and this I wanted a lot of the women to hear today. I did invite a lot of the women to come here today to hear. When I was 3, I was being sexually abused by my uncle. That lasted 7 years. He was one of South Africa's worst pedophiles. He was massive in this country when it came to kidnapping young children, taking them to other countries. I didn't have the opportunity for justice because when he was arrested, he committed suicide in prison. He wasn't even sentenced yet. He committed suicide while he was awaiting trial. So I never had the opportunity to see justice. I never had the opportunity to I was young, so I was 11 when this all happened. But anyway, he was dead, he was gone. It never would happen to anybody again. It would never happen to another girl again. But at that point in time, the rejection from my mom, the beatings from my stepfather, the fact that I wasn't with my own father, the absolute hatred from my stepmom, the fact that I'd spent 7 years of my life being fearful of a man, just completely made me who I was at that point in time. I was broken. I was I was destroyed. I was absolutely an emotional wreck. I then obviously was back and forth from my mom until I landed up with my dad when I was 16, and I decided 2 years and no more. I'm moving out. I'm going to live by myself. I'm going to work. I'm going to make something of my life. Now, you must remember, a lot of the time when people are damaged from young, they are incapable of making the right decisions. They're incapable of becoming somebody great. Every single member of my family looked at me and thought, she'll be pregnant by the time she's 16. She'll be a drug addict. She'll be an alcoholic. She will have landed up in prison. When I was 14, I made a choice and I made a vow, even though right now I know making a vow to God is not right. But then I had made a vow to God and said that I would never become a drug addict, and I kept to that. I also never drank because I saw what alcohol had done in my own family and how it turned on me. I didn't have to drink, but I suffered because of somebody else's drink. Anyway, so like I said, going through that kind of childhood formed me into who I was in my early 20s. Not even early 20s, it was by the time I turned 18, I was out of control. I was so reckless with my life. I couldn't have cared what had happened. Although through all of that, I never turned to alcohol. I never turned to drugs. I suffered quietly, silently. I never spoke to people about the things that were going on in my life. I never confided in people because I didn't trust people. Because of the fear of man that I had, I couldn't even speak to somebody. I couldn't be alone in a room with somebody because immediately being alone with somebody in a room meant they were going to hurt me. Being alone in the room with somebody meant they were going to beat me. So I could not talk to people. I was so afraid of, it didn't matter whether it was woman or man. I couldn't physically be in a room with anybody. I would never in my life be able to stand up at that point in front of people and talk. I would shake, I would sweat, it was horrible. But anyway, so I had to rediscover myself. I had to find out who I was as a person. I had to forgive. Okay, but I wasn't ready to forgive. Okay. But I had to figure out what I wanted for my life. Because there was such a lack of love in my life, I had Caleb and Jordan, who are my kids. I did not have my kids because it's a natural thing to do. I had my kids because I knew they would have to love me. If nobody else in the world loved me, it had to be those two kids. And I have been so overwhelmed by love from my two kids. I couldn't ask for a better position as a mother than I am right now. But at that point in time, I started looking for love in the wrong places. I needed to be loved. I didn't know what it felt like to be loved. I'll give you some examples. My mom would say, I love you, but I don't like you. My mom would put my sister first at everything. My mom would punish me for weeks on end. Let me just read the comment. My mom would lock me up for weeks in my room, and the family would go out and they would do things families do. I would be stuck in my room. I never understood why. I never understood what the purpose was. of keeping me in my room for weeks on end. Until one day I had a conversation with my biological father, who, you must remember, at that point in time, I was looking for my father. I was running away from home. I was 9 years old when I slept on the street for the first time. In the coldest winter, I slept in a thorn bush. But I did that to protect myself from another beating. I mean, I had no choice but to either run or take it. Most of the times I took it. But I just got so tired of it that I had no choice but to run. And every time they'd get me, I'd run again. And every time they'd get me, I'd run again, until there was a point where I could no longer run. So, I know this is a really glum story, but I mean, somebody's got to tell it. Somebody's got to show you guys that we are all human. You know, we go through things, we hurt. You know, when I asked a bunch of girls a while ago, when you look at me, do I look like I'm happy? Do I look like I'm healthy? And they said, yes, yes. It just goes to show how wrong a person can be. How you judge me, or how I'm judged because of the way I dress, because of the car I drive, because of the way I speak. But nobody knows what's behind. Nobody knows what's behind this heart. Nobody knows what's in this heart. I have spent a lifetime surviving. I mean, I reckon 12 years ago I started living my life. 12 years ago I started being human. I didn't have to fight for my position. I didn't have to fight for love, because somebody loved me the way I wanted to be loved. Somebody defended me. Somebody taught me what it would mean for me to stand up and be confident. Somebody taught me that I didn't have to be scared when I spoke to humans. Somebody taught me that it was okay. And from that moment on, like I said, I have been working since I was 16. But from that moment on, I decided I would be the best I could be. I would be the best person, that when my family looked at me and thought, you should have been a drug addict, you should have been an alcoholic, you should have been pregnant at 16. I would work so hard that I would prove them all wrong. I did. I became a workaholic eventually. I found, you know, let me rather put it like this. When somebody hurts you, Jade's phoning. When somebody hurts you and you keep quiet, you are allowing them to continue hurting you. You teach people how to treat you. And I learned that. I learned that the hard way. No matter how much I loved, I never got it back. Not the way I expected to. I found love in all the wrong places. Literally all the wrong places. Okay. But love had worn me out so much because I needed it so desperately. I'd searched my entire life for it. It had worn me out. Acceptance, love, no matter what it was. I found it in one person, pretty much halfway through my life. One person I can say, who is the right person, has loved me the way that I should have been loved all that time before. And I'm married to him now. He's a good husband. Sometimes it's very, very hard to forgive, even the simplest of things. Sometimes it's very, very hard to even pray for those who hurt you. I had every reason in my life, every reason in my mind, I had in my life to not serve God. I had every reason in my life to become an extremely hateful person towards those who hurt me. I had every reason not to forgive. I gave God 1,000,000 reasons not to forgive me. But He still forgave me, which means that who was I not to forgive? In my mind, in my heart, my life was pretty sad from the get-go. I didn't have a childhood. I was always fighting to survive. I was always fighting for affection and for love, for attention. I sought the attention in the wrong places with the wrong people. But I learned later on in my life, like I said, my childhood was non-existent. I did not have a childhood like others did. But later on in my life, it became better. It became more bearable to be alive. People often say, yeah, no, I was at a point in my life where I just wanted to die. I was there. I didn't want to live anymore because what was the point? Who was I living for? So one day, I took a 9mm gun out of the cupboard and I sat with it for an hour, contemplating whether I should pull the trigger. Because after all, what was the point of living? I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't want to be around. I didn't want to keep fighting for somebody to love me. You know, the weirdest thing is after all that time, you know, the person I love today, the God I love today, loved me through all of that, protected me through all of that. I mean, I suppose I was destined for destruction back then. You know, when I was 18 years old, I was in a horrific car accident. The car was so crumpled up, they had to cut us out with the jaws of life. But He protected me. I got out of there with a broken collarbone and a cut hand. When they looked at the car, they said there was no way anybody should have survived or should have lived through that accident. But I got out. I had a sore collarbone for like 3 months, cut hands and glass in my hands, but He protected me. He saved me. He kept me alive. When I sat with a gun in my hand in a dark room, contemplating whether I should do this or not, He protected me. He stopped me from pulling the trigger and ending my life. God knew, or should I put it this way? I felt that God knew everything I'd been through. He was there. He was there. He helped me through it all. You know, He taught me how to forgive. He taught me how to have compassion. He taught me how to love. And if those were the 3 things that I was meant to learn from my life, then I would do that all over again. If my testimony today will be able to save one of you, then I would relive my life over and over and over again. Because I never became selfish. I never became hateful. I never became angry. All I did was love even harder, forgive, and accept people. I'll always say, do not judge until you have walked in those shoes. You know, if you had to take everything that happened in your life, put it in a black dustbin bag, and let's say you were all living in the same street, and you took that dustbin bag full of your own life issues and your own life problems, and you put it out on the pavement, and everybody else did that along with you, and somebody came to you and said to you, okay, now walk up and down the street, go choose the bag that you prefer to take home. What do you think you're going to do? You're going to go back to the same bag. Because as much as I think my life was horrible and disastrous, somebody else suffered worse than I did. Somebody else had to deal with more than I did. Now, please don't think that I don't have a relationship with my mom, because through all of that I had to forgive her. My mother became my mother 8 years ago. I understood that she was in love with her new husband, and he took priority, and you know, he was her life, and I don't take that away from her. But I realized that my mother was broken. I could not expect her to be, either one of them, be brilliant parents, because when I was born, I already got my mom broken. She wasn't healed. She wasn't whole. She was fighting her own demons. And I think the marriage to my father was so volatile that when she divorced my dad, she wanted nothing to do with anything that came from him. But 8 years ago, God opened up a door for both of us, and we were able to forgive one another. I was able to do the majority of the forgiving because, I missed her. I don't know what it feels like as a child to have a mom. I don't know what it feels like to go out with your parents, to have that mother-daughterly bond. But what I did do, and the promise I made to myself, was that which they were not to me, I would be to my own children. I would be the best mother to Caleb and Jordan as I could ever possibly be. I raised them by myself because their father was also just another part of the story, you know. But I chose to raise them on their knees. I chose to raise them in the presence of God. Now, like I said, when I was 14, I never forgot giving my life to Jesus. I never forgot asking him to be my personal Lord and Savior. But because of how messed up I was in the process, I wasn't able to serve the way God wanted me to serve. I was too busy doing my thing. I was too busy looking for love. I was too busy looking for acceptance. I was too busy trying to survive life that I never gave my life to God the way I should have. I know envy is a sin, but I envied those, and still do today, envy those who got to serve God from the age of 16, who got, when Pastor Andrew says, you know, when he gave his life to God at the age of 16 and he just served God from there onwards, how much of my life did I mess up? How much of my life did I waste? I only got to serve God from 2019. And I know that I'm chosen for a time such as this. Everything is as it should be right now. But I long for the time that I'd missed with him. I'd long for the time of how much wisdom and how much knowledge I could have gained in all those years. How different I would have been. How different I would have been as a person compared to what I am now. But then I also want to say, I don't want to be different from who I am now. I don't want to have to change who I am, because I'm kind, I'm compassionate, I'm loving, I'm caring. I have always had empathy for people. And when you are dealing with youth that hurt, somebody who's been through that is more able to relate, to feel their pain, as somebody who has grown up in a perfectly normal household. So, as I stand before you today, I do not regret. Thank you, Mr. Nasser. I'm getting really dry mouth here. I do not regret going through the life I lived. I am strong. I am courageous. I am enough. I am who He says I am. I am His child, and I'm a daughter of the King. I know my place. I know my identity now. It took me many, many years, 43 years, to find out who I was, to find out what real love was. It spent my whole life looking for real love in man. In the meantime, I could have had that real love with God. He was waiting. I was just too busy. So when you find yourself reliving, fighting to survive, or going through painful experiences, especially you women, there comes a time where we have to deal with it. We've got no choice but to deal with it. But there comes a time where we need to learn to forgive. If I had stayed angry and bitter, I would have been a horrible person. If I had stayed angry and bitter at my abusers, and I didn't have one abuser, I didn't have two abusers, I had 3 or 4 abusers in my life. And I've had to learn to forgive each one. But most importantly, I had to forgive myself. I had to start with forgiving myself for the things that I'd done. I had a very destructive life. After being hurt the way I was, being rejected the way I was, why wouldn't I be anything else other than destructive? I wanted to be destructive. I wanted to jump off buildings. I wanted to do the weirdest things with the biggest thrills, in hope that it would take away any kind of pain I had. But like I said, if it wasn't for my life, my mess became my message. My test became my testimony. I stand before you today and tell you, I was once broken. I was broken as a person from a young age. I look at the kids today. There's Grace. Grace is not my daughter. Okay. Grace and Daniel, I took out of a squatter camp. She's not embarrassed to say where she comes from, and I will use her testimony to glorify God. I will glorify God through everything that happened to me and everything that happened to that girl. But when I got involved with the squatter camp, I found Grace and Daniel, whose names are actually Pagan and Damien. Their names have changed. And I took them. They were given to me by their mom. Their mom is a drug addict. She gave the kids to me and she said, yeah, take care of them. So they have been with me for 2 years and 3 months. And it's been challenging, but it's been the best 2 years and 3 months of my life, because my kids are big now. Caleb and Jordan are grown up, are married, Caleb has 2 children, Jordan's still trying. But God trusted me enough to give me those 2 kids to start all over again. I will not disappoint them. I will not disappoint God. Pastor Andrew said something so profound. Give them back to God in a better condition He gave them to you in. And that's what I intend doing. Your husbands, your wives, give them back to God in a better condition than He gave them to you. Forgiveness is extremely important. I just want to read. Repay no evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. That's 1 Romans 12, verse 17. Ephesians 2, verse 8. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God. And that just tells me it's by His grace that He saved me from everything. It's by His grace that I stand here today, and I honor Him. Proverbs 5:15, verse 1. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. I really encourage you guys today. If you are holding on to things from your past, you're always going to stay in your past. If you let go and you forgive, you're going to go to places you never imagined. When I gave up before I forgave, I was an introvert. I kept to myself. I didn't speak to anybody. My clothes spoke volumes about who I was as a person. I didn't want to be noticed. I didn't want anybody to even know that I existed, although I was looking for love. When I finally forgave myself and I forgave the people that were involved in hurting me, I became this butterfly. This metamorphosis happened, and I became something completely different from what I was. I was a caterpillar stuck in a cocoon for many, many years. The moment I forgave and the moment I surrendered, I became a butterfly, transformed into something completely different. Is why I can stand here today and say to you, forgive, love. Do not judge one another, because you never know what the next person is going through. Thank you. Don't forget to partner with us at www.feed14k.com. We would like to raise between 300 and 500 rand a day, or 1,000 or 30,000. If you don't have money, pray for us. Thank you.